Was the 2020 election rigged? I have an opinion that differs both from the people's opinions on the left and people's opinions on the right. I'm a very moderate political person, even though I do keep up on the candidates and the agendas regularly. And just to give some background, I voted for Obama twice. I voted for Trump once. I did not end up voting at all in the last election because I was kind of tired of both candidates and really didn't want either one of them. And now we have them again, but that's a different story. In 2012, my guy was Newt Gingrich. I really like, the fact that he's just well read and understands the U.S. government and U.S. history. And then in 2020, when the Democrats were having their um, primaries, my guy was Pete Buttigieg, who won Iowa and then sort of disappeared in early on in the primaries. And I never understood that, but I would have backed Buttigieg all the way, and I would have backed Gingrich in 2012. So there's my very kind of all I look at candidates on a very individual basis, not necessarily because of their parties. Now to the 2020 election, was it rigged? Not necessarily, but there were conditions that the COVID pandemic, made that made the 2020 election kind of unusual, and that's really at the heart of you know whether people think it was rigged or unfair or not. Um, have no doubt that because of the pandemic, ballot voting was encouraged and it was exploited, but not and ballots were harvested. I'm going to get to the term ballot harvesting in a bit. It's not necessarily an illegal or bad thing. Um, you know, because remember the night of the 2020 election, Trump was ahead when all of the traditional voters, read old people who are mostly Republicans, they finished voting, and Trump seemed to be ahead in all the swing states. And then slowly but surely, the harvested ballots, not necessarily illegal, you know, COVID pandemic was real, and ballot voting was expected to be much, much higher than usual. But it also gave the ground game of the Democratic Party, who had a much stronger ground game, and they were totally motivated because they hated Trump. I'm not a Trump hater, but let the other people think what they want. We're all allowed to have our opinions, right? Um, those ballots that were harvested in the large cities inside of those swing states really swung the vote totals over to Biden. And if you and I and here's the other issue. You could say, well, the ballots were invalid, or there were too many of them, or they weren't. There has never been a news story that said that a bunch of fake people were on these ballots. I think that would have come out. I think that voter registration and voter ballots are probably scrutinized, and if there are a large number of them that were representing people that didn't even exist, I think that story would have come out. But so you know my use of the word ballot harvesting is, yes, the Democrats took advantage of that. They were much more motivated to not have Trump as the next president than the opposite was motivated to not have Biden. And the Republicans didn't, you know, they didn't cram into large population centers and get people to sign up to vote. The Democrats did. And thus far, none of the ballots, there's not a lot of there was no news of ballot fraud. And so, the reality of the 2020 election being rigged or not is, rules were bent, and the Democrats were super motivated. They harvested those ballots in those high population centers that tend to be Democratic, Milwaukee, Atlanta, Detroit, etc. And they just, they got the job done, and it seems to have been a legitimate case of ballot harvesting. And that's all I have for you.